welcome back. This is part 2 of our 2-part video series on how recruiters are compensated. Okay, so last week we dug into the different kinds of recruiters you will find out in the wild. So you have your agency recruiters, you have your corporate recruiters like myself, and there are also the RPO or contract recruiters we touched on a little bit. Everybody's compensated a little bit differently. Here's the thing, even within those categories, we're compensated differently, okay? There are all kinds of nuances related to like level and the kind of recruiting you do. Tech recruiting tends to pay more for reasons I don't know because it's hard, but so is accounting and so many other things, right? And so anyway, it's weird, but the market does what it does. Here's what I want to talk about this week. I want to break down some of the more common packages or kinds of compensation you'll see in recruiting roles, and what does that mean for my job seeking community, right? Hopefully we can tie this all back together to how you can use this information to better interact with recruiters. I think understanding their motivators and the things that they are held accountable for and responsible for only makes all of us better. If you understand that I have this, key performance indicator that I have to hit, maybe you'll position yourself or be able to position yourself as someone who can help me hit it. That's where the magic happens, right? Okay, so we got the handy-dandy whiteboard back out. Let's start with our agency brethren and how they are typically compensated. So my agency friends, and by all means, it's been some years since I left agency, but I don't think it's changed that much, generally are going to be on some kind of a commission model, okay? And they have one key KPI, which is more important than anything else, and it is billings, okay? So a lot of agency recruiters are measured, their effectiveness is measured by how much money they bill. Where do the billings come from? That's right, boys and girls, placing candidates like you. So this can be a combination of contractors, temp work. This could be long-term contracting. This could be go be a receptionist somewhere for a week. I've done all of that kind of stuff. And we charge a markup. So if the company is paying me $20 an hour to find a receptionist for a week, I'm going to then turn around and pay that receptionist $12 an hour. I'm making $8 an hour on that spread. That's my markup or my gross profit. And I'm typically going to get a commission based off of that. There's a formula, there's math involved. It was always really hard for me to wrap my head around. But out of that $8 spread, I got to keep the lights on, I got to pay the office rent, I got to, pay for the internet, whatever. So that spread is not necessarily just cash in my pocket. There's actually other costs related to running a business or running a branch or being part of a larger agency family that come out of that money. But billings is kind of the chief measure of a successful agency recruiter, and billings are a direct result of the people that we have placed on assignment or in full-time placement. Okay? Full-time placement is where we see these big fat fees. Okay, so a typical, let's say it's 25%. I always kind of did between 20 and 30%, depending on the company, depending on the complexity of the role, those kinds of things. I think that's still kind of standard-ish. You'll hear a lot of people bitch that 20% is too low. Maybe. I made a shit ton of money charging 20% with a bunch of clients that I had exclusives, so it's like, I'm the only one you're working with, so I know it's mine, right? So that's a pro. If it's really hard, or I know I'm competing with other agencies or whatever, I probably don't want that business, but maybe the fee's higher, whatever. But the way that compensation works is, let's say I'm gonna hire somebody at $100K, I'm making 25% of that. My fee is 25%, or 25K, obviously, because easy math. And again, just like the gross margin spread, I may pocket that entirely. I may split that with the house. I may divide that between myself and another recruiter. Like if I owned the client and you owned the candidate, we're going to split it down the middle. So there's different ways that can also be sliced and diced. But that is, again, this is the billings we're talking about here, which determines my paycheck as an agency recruiter. A lot of agency recruiters will also be on something called a draw versus commission. A draw is when they're basically fronting you a salary. So, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year, whatever, but that is deducted from your billings, your gross margin dollars, your fees, to cover the spread. So to cover your draw, so money we have loaned you basically against future commissions. So you have to bill above and beyond that to actually make money in agency. It can be very lucrative, but it can also be very sporadic. I definitely had like feast and famine months every year, and it was exhausting, to be honest. And I'm not good at budgeting. So anyway, here we are. The second is my corporate friends, right? I'm a corporate recruiter. And I've been doing this for about 10 years. The kind of gold standard for me, like the metric that matters, is not dissimilar to agency, but I'm measured on hires. That's it. That is my one like North Star for an agency recruiter. It's billings. Billings are a result of hires, right? So you could kind of say, well, that's the same thing, Ames, except it's not, because the dollar amount of a billing can vary. You could make more money making one full-time placement than you can placing 10 temp workers, depending on the markup and depending on the fees. So those hires are not necessarily created equal, and that's where the difference between billings and hires comes in. For a corporate recruiter, you are often going to have a number of hires that you have to make. That is your KPI. For me, I have to hire 2 people a month. That's the requirement for me to keep my job. Those hires, again, are not necessarily created equal. Some hires are more impactful, some are harder, some are easier, some are, kind of freebies because, hey, we got a great referral, whatever. But there is going to be a number of hires that I'm responsible for. The other things that I also have to think about as a corporate recruiter are impact. Okay, this affects my compensation. This affects my opportunity for promotion, my ability to, move up in the organization, hell, my ability to keep my job, right? So I have to think about that too. And so, how that is measured can vary from company to company. I know some of the things that I've done that have stood out and have gotten me where I am is creating reporting. That's been something I've done at a couple places that has been well received, and building out a strategy, bringing some different ways of looking at candidate generation and candidate experience, those kinds of things. So there's some different mechanisms that I will be measured against, which helps my leadership know, am I worth my compensation package, which looks like this. Base salary. It's typically pretty lucrative for a corporate recruiter, especially in tech, especially on the coast, West, and I think also East Coast. I'm going to get a base salary. I may also have bonus potential. So that could be an annual cash bonus in some places. And then I could also potentially earn equity. Particularly in tech, I see this in startups as well. Different companies will kind of have different packages, but most of the places I've worked at least recently, kind of have this three-legged stool, if you will, for an offer, and it is a base and a bonus and an equity package. I can tell you, and part of this is just a function of my seniority and where I'm at in my career, I've made more money as a corporate recruiter than I ever did in agency. And I was making damn good money in agency. Okay, I was a top biller, off and on. I was like killing myself to get those billings and to make that, beat those thresholds and make a lot of money. And thankfully I did move into corporate, and I just, for me, just segue quickly, I like it better because I get to spend more time here. And that's my love language. I love strategy and impact and thinking how to improve processes. And so to be able to do that and still result in hires and still have this really solid, compensation package that I can live very comfortably on is huge for me. So I prefer it. I know a lot of agency recruiters, bless their hearts, have called me a corporate sellout who couldn't hack at an agency. Okay. Whatever you say. Anyway, it is what it is. But both are great career paths. And then the last, we talked a little bit about the RPOs last week. There are typically, and I would encourage any RPO recruiters to weigh in because I don't know. I have not personally done it. My understanding is a lot of times these are hourly roles. And so you're making a pretty good hourly wage. I've seen hourly rates for recruiters on the West Coast, like $50 an hour is actually kind of low these days. So $50, $60, $70 an hour. I've seen upwards of $100 an hour. I certainly, because again, as a contractor, right, you don't necessarily have benefits. You don't have some of the other, kind of bells and whistles or total comp package. I'd be really expensive hourly. We don't want to go there probably. But I've seen, again, those packages anywhere from $50 to $100+ an hour, and companies are happy to pay it. So again, when you're talking about RPO or contract recruiters, they are generally being measured on the number of hires. That is, again, kind of that benchmark. It's less about strategy. It's less about the larger circles of impact because contractors are usually brought in to perform a function. That function, in the case of recruiting, is making hires, okay? So lots to unpack there. I hope that was helpful and kind of gave you an idea of how this recruiting stuff works. Understand from a job seeker's perspective. Now, what do you do with this information? Okay. The thing to keep in mind is understanding what can the recruiter actually do. If they're a corporate recruiter, they're going to be bound by that company and the roles that they are responsible for filling. If they're an agency recruiter, they're going to be bound by the relationships that they have, the contracts that have been signed, the companies that they're able to work with. Unless you want to be their MPC, most placeable candidate, and there's a business development play, which we talked about last week. So as a job seeker, understand what are the performance measures for the recruiter, what are the things that the recruiter is focused on, and how can you showcase your fit for the roles that they are working on to help make that hire or gain that billing. That, my friends, is the secret sauce for a job seeker. So I hope that helped demystify a little bit of what drives a recruiter. We are typically coin operated. We are in it for the money and we understand kind of the levers that we need to pull to make sure that we're meeting the expectations and we're making the hires and we're achieving the billings that we're required to do in order to keep our jobs. Okay. So great candidates are the candidates who fit the criteria that we have been tasked with filling. Great candidates are willing to work with us as we navigate these sometimes tricky waters around submitting you, getting you interviewed, going through all those processes. And great candidates are also super patient with the things that we cannot share, confidential information, feedback in some cases, those kinds of things. So understand we're all in this together. We're all looking for the same thing, which is to get a great person, a great job. Okay? So hope that helps. Leave me a comment down below. Send an email, amy@recruitinginyogapants.com. We will see you next week.